Welcome to Zuma, to the shores of Tripoli. We fight our country's battles in the air, on land and sea. First to fight for right and freedom, and to keep
On this episode of Cigars and Sea Stories, Bennett and Mike sit down to discuss insecure entrepreneur. And what I mean by this is the insecurities that we have as entrepreneurs, but then you're kind of doubling down on the insecurity that you have as a veteran away from the tribe as well. So, Bennett.
Michael.
Diving straight into this, broheem. When you first were like, hey man, I'm an entrepreneur, this is what I'm going to do, did you seek out groups, resources immediately, or was that something that you tiptoed into?
Something that I tiptoed into. Well, you know what? I didn't even tiptoe into really because I didn't know what even existed. So I guess I did, but I'm not somebody that tiptoes into anything. So I guess what I really did was I just started really digging and looking.
Yeah.
And then as soon as it happened, I found like EBV and, all the different things, Techstar, all the different accelerators and schools and and started looking like, oh man, could I even go to school for this?
So what was the first resource? It was more than likely, I would imagine, online, something like that. Was there anything immediately?
Actually, the first thing was Entrepreneur Magazine. I just started reading articles that were published by Entrepreneur and then Inc. as well.
Yeah, sure.
And what was the other one? There's another, Business Insider. So, I come from a background of very entrepreneurial types, I guess you could say. My mom, she always was doing some side hustle or business or whatever you want to call it the whole time I was growing up. Even like my dad and mom, like with we had a huge garden, like they would sell excess stuff at like a little stand out in front of our house. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That type of stuff. And then the hustle for me started early with the lawn mowing, that kind of thing. And I would go from neighbor to neighbor and all that type of stuff. But after that, I just kind of got away from it. And then really, the biggest resource that I found right off the bat was the Entrepreneur Magazine website, which is an invaluable resource, frankly, if you're just kind of thinking about stuff. And then what's the other magazine? Fast Company? Is that what it's called?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is pretty, but that's more of a intense kind of once you've gotten rolling sort of.
Yeah.
And then the SBA.
Right.
And then I started looking up, oh my God, there's stuff for veteran entrepreneurs. And really that's when I found EBV, Boots to Business, stuff that's surrounding that space. And then I dove right into that, as you know.
Yeah. See, that's interesting.
What about you?
I mean, when I was a kid, I was an entrepreneur and stuff like that, but didn't really realize what it was. And then later on, as I was going to transition out of the core, I read Think and Grow Rich. And
that was the other thing, just to bring up. I didn't even know what the word entrepreneur really meant.
Yeah, well,
I didn't have a freaking clue. It was just like, you own your own business. Entrepreneur wasn't, when we were growing up too, it wasn't, we are there's a little generation between us, but nobody used the word, at least not that I heard, you know what I mean? Until I don't know, 2012 maybe, when I really started hearing that word entrepreneur and then vetrepreneur and all that. Not to cut you off, but.
Well, no, you bring up a good point, and that's one of the anecdotes in my most recent talk. Yesterday, it was awesome. It was a great opportunity. I got to address the Boots to Business class folks who are interested in Boots to Business out of the Wake Tech Community College area or the general RTP area We were down at the National Guard Joint Forces headquarters there on Gold Star. And
Now, is Boots to Business more, is that IVMF or is that SBA or is that just Boots to Business? Is it its own entity?
Good question. So
Who runs them?
It's a partnership between SBA and IVMF.
Well, there you go.
Kind of funny. Mike Schenecker, or Mike Schenecker? I can never pronounce.
I thought it was Shenik.
I think it's Schenek. Great guy. Met him numerous times at different EBV functions. Hard-working dude. Super busy all the time. He is, I believe, the national coordinator of that. But Dr. Haney was the one who told me Boots of Business is going to be, yes, an adjacent with IVMF, but North Carolina as a whole is a spearhead, as well as then, Texas, California, Colorado, where we've got a larger veteran population, what have you. Anyway, Boots to Business is its own program. It's typically for entry level who are looking to come out of active duty or the Guard or what have you, and it's the first taste of entrepreneurship that you get. It was an amazing opportunity. A friend of ours, Katie Gales, called us up over at Wait Tech. She's the entrepreneur director, I believe. But she's awesome. And so she contacted me and said, hey, I want you to speak on this topic, just kind of tell your story, what have you. And one of the anecdotes that I put in there is for entrepreneurs who are in the audience, I'm like, when I first heard the term entrepreneur, I asked my teacher what it meant. Miss Grant looked at me and just said, oh, it's somebody who works for themselves. It's a small business owner.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, okay, so like you. And she laughs. And she's like, no, it's not like me. I work for the school. That's much bigger. It's like the guy who owns this. And she started rattling off all the different little businesses around town. And I was like, oh, so just like regular people own that? And she goes, yeah, so those are entrepreneurs. And then we just kind of went back to class. But that's a small business owner, and I get that. Yes, that's an entrepreneur, and I get that. But that I just feel like that's so off. Saying that it's somebody that works for themselves or somebody who's a small business owner, those are all identifying factors and categories in it. Like a 1099 contractor is an entrepreneur because they work for themselves.
Yeah, but there is a difference. I mean, I think what's happened is that technically entrepreneur has kind of become a catch-all. Right. Where in all actuality, I think especially half a dozen years ago, maybe 5-6 years ago, when you said entrepreneur, the first thing that, and still for me, this is the way it is. The things that pop into my head are guys like Richard Branson, guys like Elon Musk, guys like Fred Smith, guys like who's the guy from Domino's? Or Little Caesar, sorry.
Mike Ilitch.
Mike Ilitch. Guys like that literally became, they're not just business owners, they're innovators. Like they change the way the game is played because they literally get into it and change the way that business is done.
Sure. Well, and I would go one step further to call them magnates.
Magnates or founders or
because now there you go. Now there's the term right there because you just hit on it. Richard Branson's and everyone else, those are magnates in my opinion because we all know them. Yes, they're serial entrepreneurs. They've had great success, but really they started with one small business. Little Caesars was a little shit pizza shop that eventually evolved, and then he had the ability to buy Olympia Media and so on and so forth, and then eventually the Red Wings. And yes, a Marine Corps veteran owns the Detroit Red Wings. That's what's up. But the thing that you just hit on is founder. And that is what I want to hit on. In my opinion, if you are a founder within an organization and you were there from the beginning, maybe you didn't orchestrate the business plan. You came in a couple of months into the process, maybe a year into the process, maybe 2 years into the process. But the company is not fully aloft to where they're cranking out payroll and giving you a W-2
Yeah.
You're a founder, and that means you're an entrepreneur. And I think that we're doing a big discredit for saying that initial program developers are not entrepreneurs who helped us in this entrepreneurial endeavor. For me, an entrepreneur is someone who is willing to work with other people in order to build a stronger, better future. But there needs to be that initial onset, that initial group who, if you're talking old school brick and mortar, they were the ones who actually raised the sides of the building and then put it all together and then hopped inside and started working the till and making the beer and everything else. And then the beer maids who got hired on and the bus boys who got hired on and the entertainment that got hired on, that's all employees. But the folks who started that actual entity, those are the founders and those are the entrepreneurs.
Right.
I just think that we're kind of screwing ourselves over.
Well, we start this episode, we talk about the insecure entrepreneur.
Correct.
Now, when we talk about that, it comes down to, and you know what? Most entrepreneurs, small business owners, whatever you want to call them, they run into that insecurity. They run into it's an insecurity complex of sorts.
Yeah.
That basically is, you're running your own business, but you don't feel like it's a real business because it's, you know what I mean? It's just
right.
like an idea. So yeah, of course. And this is one of the big mistakes that I think ends up happening is people to make it feel like it's a real business. They'll run out, they'll get the website, they'll get the business cards, they'll get all the stuff before they actually have fully figured out what their idea is. I mean, I'm guilty of it. You're guilty of it. I think most guys that have multiple entities that they're fielding are guilty of it too. And there is a insecurity that comes with that because you're like, you want to have this aura or this portrayal of legitimacy, but none of us really have it unless we come to the realization that what you're doing is legitimate. It's a legitimate idea. It's a legitimate thing. And you know what? And I think that goes hand in hand with failure, is that if it doesn't pan out, I mean, you know about failure. I know about failure. If it doesn't pan out, you just move on to the next idea.
Right.
But I think a lot of people get hung up talking when we say the insecure entrepreneur. A lot of people get hung up on that legitimacy factor. Would you agree with that? I mean, I'm sure you come across it all the time.
Yeah, and I echoed that exact same thought, actually. Funny enough, it's that whole tone of we want to be rebels, but we want to be legit.
Right.
And
we're rebels, but we also need, initially, you've got to have compadres and you need to fit in a little bit, or at least you have to have a group of like-minded individuals.
And that's where I'm going. Well, you need a group of close-hearted individuals.
That's it, because not like-minded, but at least people that are on the same path, or at least that get it.
So
not necessarily the same.
So here's the thing with me, and this is where Insecure Entrepreneur originated. The detention room.
Yeah.
Okay? And here's why I say that. I showed up for class on time, maybe looking the part, maybe not looking the part. The stuff was not interesting. I do not want to be here. I have already learned the basics that are associated with this. You are boring me and shoving something down my throat, and I don't want that. So I showed up and I did my end. You didn't do your end. That's how I thought when I was a kid. I showed up, I was here, you sucked at your job, and so I'm not going to pay attention to you, which I still kind of feel that way. Only now I'm paying for that professor, and I will tell a professor, like, hey, this period of instruction really sucked. Thanks anyway. But the reason why I've got that little chip on my shoulder isn't because I thought that I was smarter than my teachers. It's because I was like, screw you. I upheld my end of the contract. You didn't teach something of interest, of worth, something that I want to use. I'm just going to blow you off. And then I wound up going to detention. And I felt like a criminal because I was in detention. Well, you're a bad kid. You're doing something bad. Was I really doing something bad? I mean, I was goofing off, don't get me wrong, and talking and doing all sorts of stuff. I was probably disruptive to the class. Some of you are like shaking your head as you're in traffic right now, like, oh yeah, that was, yeah, like you're an entrepreneur. But the insecurity comes out of the fact that all of the authority figures and everybody that you looked at when you were growing up who supposedly held keys to knowledge in the future and everything else, they weren't entrepreneurs. They weren't self-made people. They just kind of like fell in line and grabbed the script, and now they're trying to teach you the same thing. And you're like, that seems a little fucked up. I'm going to go do it this way.
Right. And what you're saying correlates perfectly with when you grow up. And you've played by that script. You've gone to college. You've got the degree. You got the job with the nice big company. But any time that you have an extraordinary idea that is either to make things streamlined or help the business become more profitable or whatever, if it doesn't fit inside the little box that the construct of the matrix holds, then you're ostracized and put in detention.
Right.
Basically. So it's the same correlation with big business nowadays too. And so how many times do you see 40-year-olds, I'm an example of this, 40-year-olds that are just, I'm not going to live by your script anymore.
All right.
Because it's bullshit. And anytime I have an idea, it's squashed because it's either perceived that it's way above my pay grade or whatever. You know what I'm saying? How many times have you heard that in your freaking career?
Oh, God, yeah.
That's way above your pay grade. Well, what, just because I don't have a degree and a, rank on my shoulder? So just, at the end of the day, it correlates the same. So you got it when you were back in school. I didn't really get it then. I got it later on in life and realized that corporate America was just bullshit, at least for me. Mm-hmm. I'm not saying that it's bullshit for everyone by any stretch of imagination, because there are people that are employees. That's what they are.
Right.
And that's nothing against them. It's just I'm not really one of those people. Well, the only time I'm an employee, and this is just, I'm talking about me, is that if you're giving me an avenue to truly help people. And if I can truly help people through that, then I will work for you. But as soon as that is taken away and I can't make market difference and add value to the world, I'm out.
Right.
So, yeah.
Good point. At this moment, I would invite you to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. You can find us now on Stitcher, Player FM, iTunes. Did a quick brass check. So getting back into it and adding value. And here's the thing also, because I'm glad that you brought that up, because during those moments of insecurity where I found myself in the detention, in the detention room, I'm thinking to myself, I'm not a bad kid. I just don't give a shit about what you're trying to jam down my throat. Fuck you. Right? And I still hold that to be true. I was never a bad kid. You were trying to jam bullshit down my throat that I didn't want to begin with. But to go one step further, now you've graduated high school and you're in college and they're further jamming crap down your throat and you don't get to choose your own schedule. That galls me to no end. Excuse me, not schedule, degree path, credited courses that will add up to 120 credits where I can get a 4-year degree. Right. I don't even give a shit if my 4-year degree is in general education. Fuck you.
Right.
I did 120 plus credits. I did a capstone course. I did a thesis on this. I'm done. I played your little goddamn game. Give me the degree. You can't do that. You cannot do that in an institution these days.
Look at our friend Leo Jenkins. He always jokes because I think he's got like over 200 college credits, but yet still doesn't have a college degree.
There you go.
Right.
So I want to learn.
It's hysterical.
I want to learn interesting things. I want to swing in my, I want to swing my weight class, and I'm going to hit my strength base. I'm going to learn like everybody else does. It's just I don't want your force-fed, cookie-cutter, structured bullshit.
So let me ask you a question before you go too deep.
Right.
Why? Did you feel held back and stifled? Because this is actually a good question. Stifled when you enlisted in the Marine Corps, like with your ability to be creative in that environment. Do you know what I'm saying? Not necessarily in business, but just in it. You know what I'm saying with the correlations between business and military life. I'm saying,
Right.
Why the Marine Corps? You know what I mean? And did that enhance your ability to create and think outside the box, or did it hinder it?
Okay, so that's a really good question. Here's some candid and rare sea stories. So, I don't typically tell people that I was in fact an artist recruit in boot camp. And if you're familiar with the duties of an artist recruit,
I totally know what an artist recruit is.
you're essentially doing cover blocks and paintings and everything else for your platoon pride. And then if you're really good, other drill instructors from different platoons, what have you, will bring you a blank cover block, and then you paint their cover block, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And I was not a final drill waiver. I still had to go do all that bullshit and everything else. But more often than not, if there was like really long drill, all the kids who really sucked at drill were out there doing that. And I was locked in the whiskey locker. You know how they like,
Right. Yeah.
they kind of like false lock you in there? You're not
Sort of
actually,
like
you're not
it's
locked in, and you have a duty at the hatch.
You and the scribe are like stuck in this
Right. Now,
weird
okay,
limbo between behind the scenes and in front, right?
right. So
Yeah.
you cannot, they tell you expressly, they're like, we don't give a fuck what you do in the whiskey locker, but you will not do anything outside of the whiskey locker. And you're like, okay,
Hey,
this is right. I feel like Schrodinger's cat at this point. I'm like, am I alive or dead? Am I stuck in here, or am I free will? I don't know what's going on. So there's a duty at the hatch who's standing on the, he's got the 3 foot lockers stacked up, and that is the guy who's going to get us out so that we can make head calls. And what they do is put the master lock through the loops, and then it looks like it's locked, but it's not really locked.
right.
If they found that shit on your foot locker, you would be fucking killed. You would be dead out in the pit. Like, shut up, straight down. Anything straight down. Yeah. So,
Like your platoon wouldn't see you for a few days.
right. So it was like, I swear to God, in boot camp, I was not a skate. I did not I found one candy bar, like in the trash can. I ate that bitch like a fucking champ, like a goddamn weaseled bastard. I snuck out after lights and went dumpster diving with another recruit on the side of the $1 Million Head, just trying to grab like M&Ms and anything else that they made us rat fuck out of our MREs. I kept that shit in the blouses of my boots, you know what I mean? Anything that they told us to rat fuck you, buddy. I kept the seasoning packets and everything else tucked up in my boot bands. They even pat down searched us and didn't find my shit. Suck it. Let's see. I had cover blocks hanging in the whiskey locker, and I would spray paint the cover blocks to give them a base coat, and then you can paint off of that. You're trapped with no ventilation in a wall locker or a whiskey locker in the middle of summertime at Camp Pendleton, and you're spray painting. So the drill instructors come back in one day while we're doing these cover blocks, and I am high as fuck in this whiskey locker. I am out of my mind. Like, I should probably get out of here a little bit. I'm giggly and everything else. And the drill instructor comes in and he's like, oh my God, dude, this is badass. He's like, how did you paint that? And I'm just kind of like,
You've been huffing paint
right?
for the last.
I have been huffing spray paint for 4 hours in a fucking whiskey locker.
Your whole head's going. Whoa, whoa.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Whoa.
It's like if you're huffing compressed air.
Oh my God. So he's like, how the fuck did you paint this? And he looks at me and my hands are just covered in paint. And there's no brushes in there. There's nothing. It's just me, spray paint, and my hands have painted this cover block. Fuck, man, I wish I had a picture of it. If we could find this drill instructor, I swear to Christ, it's like 3 floating cloaked figures that essentially look like death that are hovering above the ground, kind of coming out of this haze. And it was badass. And I barely remember doing that shit. So the creativity was not lost either in how do I uphold standards and everything else and do everything that is meant of me. But then, like, when I went dumpster diving, do you think that I fucked all that shit just for me? Think I was walking around with boot blouses shoved with M&Ms? No. I came back with candy for the entire fucking platoon, man. Like, I'm not a buddy fucker. I'm like, here, you need a little Tabasco on that? No big whoop.
Right.
Tighten my rack too later. No big whoop. Because the whole idea is you're not against the drill instructors. They're training you, but like in recruit training, that shit's like fucking prison rules. If you're thinking about going into the Marine Corps, I will tell you right now, never, ever, ever walk into another platoon's area ever for any reason.
Not unannounced.
Never.
You gotta. And I remember having to go downstairs because we were on the 3rd floor.
Yeah.
We're having to go downstairs to ask a drill instructor for my senior asked me to go downstairs and ask them for something else. And I remember standing at the door, fucking petrified, screaming at the top of my lungs, recruit, blah, blah, blah. You know what I mean? I don't remember exactly what I said, but I like announced myself and this and that. And finally you see the drill instructor pop his head out of his office. He's like, what the fuck are you doing? You know?
Right.
Senior drill instructor, staff sergeant, blah, 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 freaking fastest recruit. You know what I mean? All that shit. Yeah, dude.
Oh, man. We had a drill instructor when we were in Pendleton who, I mean, it was a very simple request. He said, you two are going back over to the hooch. You're grabbing, like, this shit, and you're bringing it back over here for PT. It was, like, super simple. And these two recruits took off running, and there was a platoon in formation, like at parade rest. And their drill instructor was not talking to them. He was like talking to another drill instructor. And these two recruits, I still can't fucking believe this because we're in 2nd phase. These two recruits ran right through the middle of the formation. Like, in the 40-inch space back to front that you got, you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
They ran right through that, and I swear to God, they almost made it all the way through the platoon. And one of the squad leaders is like, what the fuck? And everybody just enveloped these guys. Just, whoa! And it turned into like this gaggle fuck fight in the middle of Camp Pendleton. I was like, holy shit! You know, looking at this from across the far, and then you, like, avert your eyes. Don't look, nothing to see here. And then you're looking back over, you're like, oh, my God, they're beating the shit out of those guys. Did we go fight them? And the drill instructor's like, what the fuck? And he looks over at him, he's like, you know, he screams to the other drill instructor or whatever, like, McMurray, did you fucking do that shit? Go fuck them up. And what? And then, so then we go running over there, and we start fighting with this other, you know, like, platoon, you know, in order to grab these guys away from them. We were just trying to break the fight up and grab these two recruits away from them. Oh, my God. The drill instructors had them outside. I mean, fucking all night. You know, it was one of those things. And it was just like, okay, so you have, that is where I gained that brotherhood, trust, so on and so forth. I didn't really stay with any of the other guys who graduated boot camp. There were like 2 or 3 that went to the fleet. And then eventually when I got to the fleet in 29 Palms, that's where the creativity was actually stifled. And then
Gotcha.
it was like, you're a fucking private, don't bother. And about 1.5 years into it, I got my brain back and could lead Marines downrange.
And then you feel like you got your freedom.
Well, because
to an extent, like you
right.
could, what's the fucking word? Operate independently.
There you go, big boy rules.
Yeah, big boy rules. So the reason I bring that up is because I like to ask guys in the military that I know are entrepreneurs that question, because everyone's experience is a little different. Mine was very free being in reconnaissance. We from the minute I got there, even as part of the reconnaissance indoctrination program, from the minute it was about thinking outside the box. Like, you better know how to fucking lead a team of reconnaissance Marines, even as a private. You
Right.
know what I mean? Because it's completely unacceptable to not. So we were taught to be leaders right from the get go. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There wasn't a whole lot of follow me. It's more like learn how to write an op order right now. Right, learn how to
Yeah.
freaking do. But you understand what I'm saying? Like, I mean, it's not,
Yes.
it's way beyond the op order part. It's like literally, it was kind of like, it's one of the ways that I explain. And
Ours was responsibility driven.
right, ours was not, wasn't as much that. I mean, that was like a foregone conclusion, but it was immediately, here's you're in charge, and here's your 5 fucking guys. Go make this fucking happen. Right. How are you going to do it? And that was ingrained in us from the get-go. And so, it's not that it wasn't to other Marines. It's just different. Because you're on your own.
Right.
As a reconnaissance element, that's it. You don't have, oh, shit, I'm fucked. Let me call these guys. If that happens, yeah, you're fucking dead.
Right.
You know what I mean? Or you better be a running motherfucker and hope that there's birds at the E&E. You know what I mean? Because it's just, you know what I'm saying? And I'm not trying to whatever. I'm just trying to gauge when that point happens, that tipping point of when you go from being a Marine to being a leader of said Marines. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And you already made that clear with yours, so.
Well, right. And my first fleet unit, though, we were in trucks. So I was in charge of just the maintenance of the vehicle and the overall truck.
Which is huge.
All of that stuff.
That's a huge deal because because guess what? If you're fucked up and your truck doesn't run and your and your vehicle commander says, let's go, we got to go, but your shit's fucked up.
Right.
You're fucking toast.
Exactly. So the reason why it matters so much, though, that it was so I was in charge of maintaining the truck, but then we had the platoon commander, section leader, my vehicle commander, and our up gunner. So our gunner had the gun, and everything in the turret was his.
Right.
And then our vehicle commander, Brad, had me switch with him so that I could be lead truck vehicle commander and learn the city and understand the ropes and learn the leadership piece, while kind of like dipping my toe into it. So I understood a lot more of the planning before I needed to learn the management aspect of it. And then in knowing the vehicle front and back, it made me that much more capable so that during QRF, I did high back driver as QRF. So you've got to have the vehicle PN'd and everything else, and you're in charge of just that vehicle, and you really don't know who your vehicle commander is going to be. It'll more than likely be a guy with a saw and a radio. And then you kind of go out into the Ville wherever you fit into the order of march. Like we would be in between 1 and 2. Just because it kind of made sense that way. We could maneuver the high back into a QRF spot. So then again, your vehicle commander's like they're basically there to say clear when you've got to take a left out somewhere, and they're watching the right-hand side, or they're there to hop out and maybe ground guide or like round the rails, or other than that, they're just relaying radio transmission, and the high bat driver has to be a kind of like their own vehicle commander and responsible for where they're going to park. And I mean, you're talking about a really big truck that's full of wounded people, and they don't have the ability to defend themselves. So you've got to be good at driving in order to get yourself and everybody else through that scenario and then back over to a higher echelon of care. So yeah, I mean, it was a lot of responsibility, which I loved. I mean, that was the biggest thing. That was the thing that I hated. And that's where a lot of insecurity for me in the entrepreneurial game comes from, is that even though it doesn't necessarily always feel like you're in, and this goes back to legitimacy, even though it doesn't feel like you're in charge of like this big thing and you're a member within the greater organization and they put a great amount of responsibility on you, now that you have your own future, you get to build it as big as you want. don't do it on shaky legs. Make sure that you're expounding off of that background that we've already got as far as military service members. So, which then later on throughout the career, because let's say, for instance, you're an entrepreneur, you're in the origins of something, right? But one of the things that we rarely talk about is entrepreneurship.
Yep.
And entrepreneurship is just simply saying, okay, I understand the culture and the dichotomy within this company. I'm going to go over here and just start a completely different company, a completely different department. I'm going to make inroads into a brand new region or a brand new country that this company had never been from or had never been to. Those are entrepreneurs. So that was the role. I mean, that's more of your reconnaissance role. And then me as an advisor was very much so an entrepreneurial role.
Right.
So, but that adds a degree of security, and yet at the same time, where the insecurity lies is the fact that I've recorded this now. Listen to my podcast, and you'll hear, the resume, so to speak. And I'm using the singular pronoun on purpose because we, in leaving the tribe that is the U.S. military, coming out, being individuals, now saying, hey, I want to start an entrepreneurial endeavor, that is not an individual starting an individual endeavor. That is a person seeking a team in order to build a culture and then orchestrate the chaos and manage the chaos in order to make a business entity come to life.
Right.
So it's not... So, again, allow me to kind of rephrase this just very briefly. If you are a person who is not seeking a 100%, I want to be an individual, blah, 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 and then joining a corporate team or what have you, and then rise through the ranks that way, now having to identify a new culture, well then why don't you team up with veterans who are in early stage entrepreneurial entities and say, hey man, I want to help you with this. Here's my specialty. I don't know how to start a business or anything else, but I'm willing to help. And then now you'll be around people who are as ambitious as you are, who are seeking change in the world. And it won't be that, oh, I'm an individual in a sea of, I don't know, suit and tie or whatever. Now I have to adopt a completely different culture, which some people don't want to do that. Some people hop out and they're like, woo, I'm going to go work for Walmart and that's my culture. And I'm like, all right, more power to you.
Right, for sure.
But other folks are like, well, I really miss that big boy rule, kind of doing shit our own way. You got to make it up as you go, evaluate, adapt, overcome. I really, really miss that. It's like, well, dude, you're definitely an entrepreneur.
Like you're at least, or at least an integral team member in some kind of endeavor.
Well, and that's what I mean. That's what I mean is that you're an entrepreneur who happens to be a team member. You're a team member entrepreneur. You're a founder. You don't know how to write a business plan. You don't know how to write an executive summary. You have no idea where to start. That doesn't matter. Somebody else is already doing that and they're floundering right now and could use your help. Go help them and ask them. Well, and then when you get on board, you're going to be like, well, I don't know how to write a business plan. Could we talk to experts about this? Blah, blah, blah. And then that's where you start going into the resources arena. You could have somebody on your team who's just looking around for entrepreneurial resources. The operation and the executive officer are looking over the business plan and everything else. The technology officer is working with the program developers who, even though they had nothing to do with the business plan, were there on the founding member team. They're entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Even if they're 1099 subcontractors, they're entrepreneurs in their own right. And I doubt that they're being I don't think that they're being counted into the numbers. Because when you
especially if they're contractors, but yet they're like totally running their own like they're the company that they're contracting for, they're the only people that do this type of work, and the company's contracting them to do that work. They're absolutely for sure entrepreneurs, and I'm not sure if they're right. It's a great point. I'm not sure if they're counted into the scope, because they absolutely are.
Well, and I was reading a statistic the other day I'm going to have to pull it up. I want to say it was Edison Research, but 10% of the U.S. GDP, veteran-owned businesses.
Yeah, and actually that's gone up over the last year because in 2014 it was labeled a 9%.
Yeah.
9%. So now I think we're rounding up, but it's either way, it's closer to 10 than it is to 9.
And I'm going to talk shit just very briefly because the majority of veteran-owned businesses are Marines.
Isn't that funny how at least I see it that way. Is that true? Do we know, or?
Oh yeah, I know for a fact.
Is there an
and I was talking
amount of Marine Corps veterans that are in it than others?
Yes. And
Okay.
I can say that definitively, and I can tell you why, very simply put. The Coast Guard, Navy, and the Air Force primarily center on a skill or a trade in order to create service. They do not have a broad-based infantry where they're... If you, I'm just going to use the term pogue, because I have nothing else to... If you're a non-infantry, you are doing your job all of the time, even when you're stateside. That's your job. Then when you deploy... You have to deploy and do your job downrange, which makes your life a billion times harder. We, in the infantry community, train, and then when we get downrange, we actually get to do our job. So I did my job for about, 24 months out of an 8-year career. I did my job. So a lot of people go, oh, that's useless skill and useless talent and everything else. Well, the Army has a great deal of infantry. The Marine Corps has a great deal of infantry and other combat arms. But one of the main reasons why Marines especially, aside from being Uncle Sam's misguided children and just having like a chip on the shoulder and a crazy wily personality and everything else, where do you go to find and recruit Marines? The detention room.
Right. Yeah. It's a good point.
And it all comes full circle, people. Dude,
yeah, man.
If I was a recruiter...
I would also put into that, I mean, yes, this is obviously a very Marine-centric podcast and everything like that, but this is why we have so many friends of our podcast that are also Rangers, because they run under the same type of mentality. And are able to adapt and overcome and all that stuff.
Quick shout out to Leo Jenkins. I am just loving your book right now, bro.
Oh yeah, man.
First Train out of Denver.
Because
it's great hearing Marty and Matt, and we interviewed those guys. Go back through our podcast, and I'll put them on there, the links or what have you.
We need to get them on again.
We do
dates.
Yes. And we need to have just Matt on. We need to have just Marty on, and stuff like that, and a comfortable, relaxed. Because the last time we recorded with him was in an Airbnb in
DC.
Alexandria. Yeah, it was near DC. Yes, and we did a 2-part series with them. It was actually 2 recordings that we did with them, and it was fantastic because it framed up them going into the GI Film Festival, which then they win Filmmaker's Choice Award. Now, I believe you can see it on Amazon. Matt Sanders.
Yeah, you can.
Matt Sanders, the director of that, was in. Help me out here on the History Channel.
Live to Tell.
Live to Tell, and then you've got, which Marty's book was already out, but Violence of Action, which had come out in between the documentary and then the film fest. Leo.
And they did another, and then Marty and Matt did another.
Oh yeah, POW.
Yeah, with Carl Monger and what's the guy who was in it? Kennedy.
Oh yeah.
It's not Tim Kennedy. But he's like a legit Hollywood actor, Ranger. Yes. That guy. So.
Yeah, Kelly.
That's it.
Yeah. So. You're talking to these guys, and then we had Leo. So we knew Leo from Nomadic Veterans, and we saw him on there, and I've seen him on other videos and such, and it's like, okay, we're going to interview Leo, and we're already friends on Facebook. We'd exchange messages, other such things. Then we had him on the show, so Leo was on not too long ago, and I'm like, I got to read this book, and so.
And that's his 3rd book.
Yeah.
The other two are good as well, just different. And yeah, love it. I love it.
It's good. It's a good adventure. So it kind of like really ties in the behind the scenes that we didn't necessarily get from the interviews.
No, absolutely. Or
so fantastic.
Or the documentary itself.
So it's
or
like
the film itself. So it's like you hear about, like, I love like the train, like talking about when they're in like the engineer's car and stuff like that. It's freaking great.
Yes. So. And you knew he was drunk because he said that, and he recounts the full stories of how shit-faced he was. Shit-faced is the adequate word. If you drink half a fifth of Jameson before you embark on a fucking adventure,
cross country,
right?
Freaking ending up cross country, cross ocean, cross half the world.
Freaking he brought like one flip flop a trucker had, 7 board shorts. Like, he was drunk when he packed. I was just like, yes. Oh fuck! I want to be friends with you and hang out every day.
Yeah, it's funny.
I'm like, oh my God, that's my jam. That's not even ad hoc. That's don't give a fuck. That's complete disregard for future self. Let's do this mission. Let's do it. I don't give a fuck. He's like rocking a 2 sizes too small Hello Kitty shirt or some shit. Just like, what the fuck, man? That's what I'm saying. See, and then those right there, those tales and meeting all those people and being out there and adding value to their world, hopefully, by supporting their mission and putting up the podcast and mixing around and cross-pollinating and everything else. That's it. That's how you get through the insecurity.
And that's what this is all about. It's about this community that we're all trying to create. And at the end of the day, I'm telling you, especially in the veteran entrepreneur space, just come be a part of it, man. That's what we're here for. We will hook you up with people that can help you do whatever you need. And that's what it's all about, man. Mm-hmm. I mean, were you insecure when you're sitting there running, missions, and other than from getting your shit pushed in or freaking whatever by getting ambushed or whatever? Right. Either way, you weren't
a timid soul.
No, but you have, confidence in the team, confidence in your training. And at the end of the day, that's what we're trying to do here. Mm-hmm. So I think that kind of wraps up the episode beautifully.
Absolutely, my friend. Absolutely. Yep. The insecure entrepreneur lives in all of us. Feel free to get in touch with us if you need to talk or hug that shit out. Maybe we could just smoke and joke, blah, blah, blah. So feel free to connect with us. You can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Player FM. Give us a review. We'd love to bump up our reviews over there. 5 stars across the board. Just a little suggestive. If you are interested in joining the show and you want to get on here, share your own sea stories, no problem. Just email us at contact@cigarsandseastories.com. That's simply put, contact@cigarsandseastories.com. If you ever want to email just one of the team members, and you're like, hey, man, quick note, thought about this for a sea story. It's just our first name and then @cigarsandseastories.com.
Or even message us on like Facebook or whatever, man.
There you go. Hit us up. We're very much so approachable, and it's always Bennett and I on there for the most part. I mean, monitoring social media. You more so than
for sure.
Me. So,
and then Tim gets on there every once in a while too, and he goes in spurts, but he's there as well. So
yep. So and then. I've got other speaking engagements that are coming up. I'm going to be in the Wilmington area. We've got the Bunker Muster that's coming up September 22nd, 2016. We've got the cohort kicking off October 3rd, 2016. We've got a bunch of stuff that's coming up. So I'm very approachable. If you put a pistol in my chest, I will draw it down and we will make this real. But aside from that, I'm glad to take a business card.
Same here.
No big whoop.
Yeah, man.
Hope you guys are doing well out there in Radio Land. And on that note, we cue the music.